We're excited to announce that we've joined the Creator Accountability Network, CAN. CAN is a nonprofit dedicated to reducing harassment and abuse through ethical education and a system of restorative accountability. We join because we care about the safety and well-being of our community members. If you feel our behavior or content has harmed someone, please report it to CAN, either via the reporting form on their website, creatoraccountabilitynetwork.org, or via their hotline, 617-249-4255. They'll help us make it right and avoid repeating that mistake in the future. CAN also needs volunteers from our communities to help with their process. So if you have skills you think will be helpful, or time and a desire to help, please visit their website to find out how you can volunteer. Most importantly, get the word out to other creators who you think would be interested in getting credentialed. Help us build safer communities together. Hi, everybody, and welcome back to the Talking About the Big Stuff podcast with Michael Cole and Matthew Cravat. I am Michael Cole.
And I am Matthew Cravat.
Today's episode is going to be probably...
Happy, joy. We talked about my dad dying 2 weeks ago. What will we talk about to be cheerful today?
We're talking about depression. So it is, right now, you and I are in August 27th, but when this episode goes out for the non-live listeners, it will be September, which is Mental Health Awareness Month.
Because podcasting is time travel.
Yeah. So we've done an episode the last 2 years. This year, I would have assumed that we were going to do one, but I didn't make plans to do it.
You just decided to be a method actor this year.
Yeah, and being a method actor. So I'm going to start us off with a story about where we're at, and then we can kind of dive in, and the story is going to be a little long. So as you know, and Alex knows, and some of our listeners will know, I was supposed to be going to Italy a week ago. And we did not go to Italy because Logan had pneumonia. And when we found out we weren't going to Italy, the morning that we were supposed to be going to Italy, I texted my boss and said, I'm not going to Italy. I'm not taking any time off now because I don't want to lose my time off. And I've been burning out and didn't really consciously
Were aware how much time you needed that time off.
Yeah, and so then the next morning, Saturday morning, I get up, I go to the gym, and I had a little bit of a breakdown on the ride to the gym, and I wrote down, as soon as I got in the parking lot of the gym, I wrote down my thoughts and feelings because things have been going on for several days, and I was able to finally kind of process them. One thing I've talked about in one of our, I don't remember if it was last year's or the year before's mental health episode, but I used to have a voice in my head that would be like, you suck, Mike. You're terrible. You're a bad father. You're a bad husband. You're a bad friend. You're a bad son. Nonstop. About 2 years ago, around the time we started doing the podcast, made a conscious effort to not allow that voice to get purchase in my brain. So it for 2 years I've not had the voice for more than a second, and I've gone, nope, can't do it. Days before we found out that Logan had pneumonia, that we wouldn't be able to go to Italy, the voice was kind of coming back. The night before we found out, the voice came back fully, because at that point we had found out he had pneumonia on Thursday. Friday morning is when we found out that we weren't going to be able to go. Thursday night, after we found out about the pneumonia, my brain started doing the upset with myself because I was upset about not going to Italy, and then I started telling myself that I was a piece of shit father because
you let him get pneumonia.
Because of how concerned.
As a father of three, I know the feeling of the helplessness that comes within your say. And Jacob had pneumonia like 4 times before he was 3 or 4. Yeah, and so I know the helplessness that happens, and then how you like. My job is to make him feel good, and I can't. There's nothing I can do, and without having diagnosed mental health issues, I know how helpless and upsetting that feeling is. So I can only imagine the magnified feeling that you have when you're in
Sure.
the same boat.
And I appreciate that you just gave me as much credit as you did, because that's not where my brain went. I was obviously concerned about Logan and wanted to make sure he was healthy and safe. But my brain, I was pissed at myself for how disappointed I was in not being able to go to Italy. And the voice came back. And the next morning, I go to the gym. I start crying on the way to the gym. And I get to the parking lot and I write down all of the things about the voice coming back, because I'm trying to be proactive in my mental health. And so I was like, it's coming back, and so I need to tell Sarah. I went and I worked out for 45 minutes to an hour, whatever it was, and then I come out. I sit in my car. I'm about to call. The problem is sometimes is that we don't have the best ability to talk because Logan's around a lot. So I was going to try to call her and be like, am I on speakerphone? Turn me on
Mm.
speakerphone. So we did that. We had that conversation. Um, and, and I, told her everything that was going on. And I said, I think this has been coming longer than I realize, or that I've acknowledged to myself yet, but I am in this spot and I want to be proactive. I'm not in danger. I'm not in that state where I'm like a danger to myself, but I know that like this is bad and I need to address this as now. And so we agreed on that. And she, while I was driving home, called my mother, and then I guess they discussed telling me about my 40th birthday party, which when I got home, Sarah told me about, and then
Does
called.
that mean I don't have to strip at the party now?
No, it means you need to strip extra hard. Um,
Well, I'll try to be extra hard, but I'm getting old.
Viagra.
I
Um,
can't always. I can't do that anymore.
and then I call, and then she told me all that, and I called my mother and father, and I told them what was going on, and it was the first step of addressing it. So fast forward a couple days, I go into work on Monday. I talked to several people. Alex was there, a few other people, including my boss, and I mentioned that I'm having these mental health issues, and that I'm like, I think it's part burnout, but it's also like this is neither of you know this because, or maybe you know that because I've told you, but you don't know this from experience. But Labor Day weekend tends to be a major trigger for me. Both of my hospitalizations were during Labor Day weekend. It's a bad time, and those, when you have certain mental health issues, anniversaries can be a big thing. Also, I'm in a situation work wise where it's very stressful. A lot of people are stressed. The economy is stressful. There's, the fact that we're in a fall of an election cycle that I'm starting to feel a little bit hopeful about, but I'm not like, we're not in the
It's
clear.
yeah.
Like there's a lot going on.
Democracy may still end. We'll
Yeah.
be partying the night before, but it may still end.
RFK Jr. may have helped, give it that extra push. But
I don't think so. I
so
think it goes the other way with him. I'm pretty happy.
oh no, but you think that I thought he's gonna.
I I don't think he has any followers who are like that were from the left that are go, well, now I'm a Trumper because he is. I don't think he. I
No,
think
but I
his
think he's
person is.
solidifying some of the people who Trump couldn't have gotten with him on the ticket. But
Yeah.
I don't know. It doesn't matter. The point being, and I actually,
But if you want to
uh,
feel really good, go to the either Leopards Eat My Face subreddit or just the Robert F. Kennedy subreddit
oh yeah,
because his fans are not happy. They are
nice,
so
good,
unhappy with him.
good. So two things. First of all, when I wrote the stuff down in the car before I called Sarah, I wrote it into our Trello that I wanted to write about relapse, because the voice had relapsed in my head is how I was
Yeah.
looking at it, and I was like, I want to talk about this. And then I ran and did all the things at the gym, and so fast forward to Monday. I tell my boss, and I've got a shitload of stuff going on. I tell Alex, I tell a few other people. It doesn't get better throughout the week. It gets progressively worse. I had anxiety attacks on. I almost wanted to say that I had like a 5 day long anxiety attack from
Hmm.
Thursday to Sunday night or Monday or whatever. Um, it's I mean you know how it is. Depression, anxiety attacks. That don't mean that you're sad every second of the day, but like the overall vibe was I was having an anxiety attack and depressive state in those times. So Friday I initiated something, and Monday I was able to like clinch it. And as of an hour and a half ago, I'm on leave of absence for mental health issues. I'm working on getting that taken care of. It's a few things. It's I want to obviously be healthy, but I want to try. I'm trying to be proactive. I the last time that I was as bad as I feel now, or not in this moment, but in general, uh, was before I met Sarah. So it's been a long time. So it feels a little foreign. But also, I don't want to be hospitalized. I don't want to get to that point because I don't want any of the things that could traumatize Logan. That's been a
Hmm.
huge thing in my head for the last 7, 8 days, whatever it's been. I don't like. There's to me, if I go to the hospital, there's two ways of dealing with that. One is Daddy is away for a few days, or there is, and when I go away, I always call him, or there is Daddy's in the hospital, and so
Which
I
there's no, that just means daddy's super sick. There's no,
no,
that's just instant fear. I
yeah,
mean, the
yeah.
hospital's a scary place. There's no
So
daddy's in the hospital so he can be, watched and
yeah,
relax and recover. It's daddy's in the hospital because he needs surgery. There's no
right. So to
differentiation.
me, the way to solve that problem is to get ahead of it as
I
best as I
think
can. And
your
sometimes,
proactivity is a very wise choice, and it's,
yeah,
as much as sometimes we hate working for corporate mega structures. Um, the advantage of that is they have these things in place where they have HR and they have short-term disability and the
yeah,
ways that we can do that even if we hate our jobs, which I don't currently. I'm not saying that, but I'm not saying you do either. I'm just saying in general, being in a corporate world can kind of suck. But the flip side
yeah,
is you're not the night shift at McDonald's and like, well, you have to be here. We don't have someone to replace you.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So that's just to get you and the audience and everybody caught up. I wanted to talk about the idea of that relapsing voice. Also, on my way home from work today, I listened to Dear Old Dads, which longtime listeners may remember I've mentioned in the past is kind of what inspired me to start this podcast. Is Dear Old Dads. Um, Listening to Dear Old Dads, Eli said people describe depression as a
Eli
voice.
said, "Give your child
There's
a bottle of
huh?
children's aspirin."
Oh, and yeah. Nobody said there's people describe depression as a guy inside my head who hates me, and I had never heard that before. I thought that was just me.
Yeah,
So I'm like, oh, okay. Like I
there's two of
am.
us.
Yeah. Well, he said that that's not the way it works for him. There's a guy inside his head who hates everybody else, but the average person describes depression as a guy inside my head who hates me. And that is hearing him say that today. I was like, holy shit! Like I thought like I didn't think I was. I don't think it's. And I know that I'm going to use old terminology because I don't have better terminology. But when we used to talk about schizophrenia in media. Like I never thought it was that kind of voice. It was never that. Like hearing and I was not hearing voices. It was just this like negative self talk, and um, I was really. It was weird to have it come back. It was weird to hear Eli say today, like, "Oh, that's how people describe depression," and I was like, "Oh, I thought
I
it was
should have been
just
describing it that way.
so."
It's interesting the timing of your issues and with me coming off of not depression obviously about my father, but sadness and grief,
Grief. Yeah.
which can mirror depression in symptoms, though not obviously in cause.
Yeah.
What we at the Triangle Free Thought Society, coincidentally, our speaker who'd been planned for months was a woman who wrote a book on handling grief as a in an atheist worldview, and she's a psychologist, so it was all evidence based things. And she ran it as like a little workshop, so it was like perfect timing for Aaliyah and I as we went to it and were involved. And one of the pieces you talked about was self talk, about that when you're in grief, similar to depression, you get a self talk that's um, not just it sounds similar to what you were talking about with Logan and the trip, that the self-talk you get is in grief is often your inner voice criticizing you for not grieving properly, for being upset about the wrong thing, or not being upset enough, or why didn't I cry, or why am I
Yeah.
doing this? And there's a lot of that. And she was very big on the you have to actively, you know, not say shut that down because you can't help necessarily help that, but reply to it. You need to counter it with positive talk, saying, no, that's wrong. I know that's wrong. I know that's not, that everyone goes through grief differently and everyone has a different response. And there's no moral judgment associated with my response because, you can't control that. It's, use Aaron Rabinowitz's thing. It's moral luck pilling. The way I
Yeah.
respond is built into me. I can't blame myself for my response. So you got to kind of try to negate the negative talk with your own active positive talk, was
Yeah.
part of her thing, which she was talking in terms of grief, but clearly she's a psychologist, so she talks in depression too. So I feel like
Yeah.
I can relate with your thing because there's a lot of that with moments of, hey, I'm cracking jokes and having fun, but my dad's still dead.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
there's a bit of that.
I had that thought today about, and I never thought about it with depression, but I think that when we look at criminal justice, I think is the best example. But like, we expect that we know how someone's going to react. If you're lying on the stand, this is what the things that you will do. Oh, you are a victim recalling what happened. Well, you didn't act the way I expected you to act. And I was today,
Yeah,
at one point, someone at work had made me laugh, and I was like smiling, and I was like, they're gonna think that I'm full of shit because I'm laughing and I'm enjoying
right.
this moment. And then I was like, and they're not going to realize that, like, I have literally I've been like in the hospital making jokes. Like, I've when I
Yeah.
had my wisdom teeth out and I was puking blood for 5 days, I was like, you come to me on the day of my daughter's wedding, because my face was swollen, and it was
Mhm.
the most physical misery I've ever been in. And so I had
Yeah.
this thing like,
Especially those of us who are comic brains. That's
yeah,
how we interpret the universe. And
right.
sometimes it comes back out to the universe before we can stop it.
Yeah. And I was really like, oh, people are going to think I'm full of shit if I'm laughing, if I'm
Yeah.
smiling. And then I got in my own head. And then at one point, I was like, oh, I feel, everything feels kind of like, compounding interest, and like emotionally, everything's compounding interest right now. And that's part of kind of how being bipolar can be anyway. But I was like, oh, people are going to think I'm faking. And then I was getting more paranoid and more depressed. And then
Okay.
someone would make me laugh, and I would, and I would be like, oh. And then when I got home, I would guess if I would ask Sarah, she probably would have thought that I was manic when I got home. And part of that
Hmm.
was the relief of being done with work for the week or month or whatever it ends up being. Um, you know,
But I think also we don't always actually know what other people can see on us, and we make assumptions like that. They're
yeah,
going to think this, think that. Because during our grief workshop, we were broken up in groups, and one of the people in my group is someone I've known for 10 years, right?
yeah,
And she says at the table, "Yeah, when you came in, Matthew, I could just see how you're just wearing your grief, and I was just so impressed that you're not staying home, that you're here and you're doing this, and you're up there doing your job." Because I was emceeing the event and and
yeah,
doing the business meeting, and I'm like, I didn't think I was showing any grief. Like I had no clue. But she knows what I normally look like. And like
yeah.
I was in a neutral state instead of a joyful state. And she recognized that's a grief
Oh yeah,
state for me, not being funny as soon as I walked through the door and just being serious and getting stuff done. And
yeah.
it was interesting.
When
It
I
was like,
when I
it
saw
like
you
wake up call for me.
when I saw you at your mother's house, you didn't seem to have you didn't appear to me to have any grief going on but I also like I know that what appears to me is not always the case, right? So I didn't think it, that much of it. Then I saw you a week later when we were recording 2 weeks ago, and I know you also had COVID at that point, but you looked more sad than you did at your mother's, and you had I think you had said I said something to you, and you said, "Well, yeah, I was kind of you I forget how you mentioned how we worded it, but like you were kind of the MC of your dad's
I was on adrenaline.
shiva."
I was playing
Yeah,
host. I didn't have time
yeah,
to be wallowing.
yeah. And and sometimes there is a little bit of a benefit of like in that moment of not acknowledging it and giving it a minute and then acknowledging it later. And hopefully I really do hope you're doing okay. But I
Yeah,
also know that
I had
like
an
everybody's
interesting.
processes.
Yeah, I had an interesting conversation with one of my friends at Shiba that I won't divulge personal details. Obviously it's a personal thing. But we were talking about how he and his dad left a million things unsaid when his dad died. And his
Yeah,
mother had like lied about his dad a lot. They had been separated. And he realized things that he blamed his dad for were his mom, not his dad. And like he had no relationship with his father for years that he should have had. Maybe his dad wasn't perfect, but he wasn't everything he thought he was. And but he feels all these unresolved issues. And I was like, my dad and I had this long conversation a week or two ago when he was in the hospital, a week or two before he died, previous hospitalization, where he was like, I'm ready if I have to go. I've lived a long life. He was super thankful for how well we had supported him over the last couple of years of his cancer, and how and like aware of what we've given up and sacrifices we've made in just in time, and small and big. And uh and the other one was like when we complained a little bit that my brothers are coming here to take care of you, and you're still saving all the shit for me to do. Like, I come over and you have all these things to do, but you know brothers had been there. And he looked at me and he goes, yeah, but we trust you. Like, the reason we've always given you more work to do and around the house and more things to do around supporting us is because we trust you to do it more than we trust your brothers to do it. And I was like, well, I'm happy you said that now. Like, that's a huge thing, to
yeah,
happily, like that's not a thing I take with me forever, that they always picked on me.
yeah,
My brothers always looked at me as the favorite. I'm like, oh, maybe they were right. I just didn't see it because the way they showed it to me was giving me more responsibility.
yeah, yeah.
So
I mean,
okay.
my dad had a similar relationship with my grandmother. Now, my dad is an only son with two sisters, and so things are different. It's a different dynamic. And my grandmother was a single mother raising two daughters and a son. So, that will change things. Lots of things will change things. But my dad, so my grandmother died 6 months before I turned 30. Up until a year or so before she died, she lived on her own, and we would go over at least once a month, him and I. He probably went over more like two times a month, and we would.
Hmm.
And she didn't live like your parents lived 5 minutes away. My grandmother lived.
7.
She no, it was at least a 45-minute ride.
My parents are 7 minutes away.
Oh, okay, yeah. But she lived 45 minutes away, and we would go drive up, and my dad would fix the washing machine, and I would fix the printer because like it was delegated out. But he was her favorite, but he was also he was the baby, so he lived there the longest. He ended up doing the most, and like after my aunts moved out, and they both kind of moved out and got married at like 19. My dad lived with her and at one point I think he lived with her until I was born, on and off. Like I was a baby when they moved out, and then we moved back in when I was in kindergarten. So like we lived with her longer, but we were there, and my dad took care of her. So it was a similar situation what you're describing. I will say this: this is just a fun story that I think you'll enjoy. I went with my dad one time, and I was doing a bunch of computer shit, and my dad took her, and I was left at the house to take care of all the computer shit, and he took her to meet my aunt at the cemetery that my grandmother is now buried at. And this was 3 4 years at least before she died. Maybe 3 4 years. That's probably about the right window. And she gets back, and I'm helping her fix something, finalize some computer thing that she needed, and I said, "How did stuff go with dad?" And I don't remember which aunt it was that went with them. And she goes, I don't want to deal with this stuff, because my grandmother was a Christian Scientist, so
Ooh,
they don't have the same beliefs around what happens with your spirit and your body and all the stuff as the average Christian, right? So she says they've picked out a spot for me. It's like $7,000. If they want a spot where they can visit me, they can pay for it. I'm not going to be there.
right.
and I was like, I remember like laughing so hard and being like, Grandma, that's perfect. Like that's how I would look at it too.
Yeah.
You know,
I mean, unless you believe that you become a ghost and haunt your gravesite, like I don't know any belief system that thinks you're going to be there. Like you're going to be somewhere else, either nowhere or somewhere else, regardless, right?
yeah.
But it is weird about picking a nice spot on a hill near a tree. Like what is that about?
So depression and sadness. Um,
Death and taxes.
I feel like I really thought I was gonna be able to tell you that story. That was gonna take up 35 minutes of the podcast, and then we would just riff a little bit for 10 to 15 minutes.
Get
We've
out
been
of here.
recording for
No,
27 minutes.
yeah. Damn, your depression is not detailed enough.
See what I that's actually speaking of that. Time, I realize that I lose track of time a lot. Like sometimes it goes by quickly. Like if I'm manic, time flies by. But I time has been crawling. The last 8 days or 9 days like it feels like it has been a month and a half since I've seen you, and it's been 2 weeks and you know less than an hour. But
Well, 3 weeks since you saw me in person.
huh?
3 weeks since you
Uh,
saw me in person. Yeah.
yeah, but I mean on here even like it just
Right.
seems
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
But
Well, we took a week off, because of, we had planned to be a week off because
yeah,
of Logan would have pneumonia. You'd have time to take care of him. So uh, it's it's weird when it's we usually see each other like clockwork. So a
yeah,
week off feels like a big gap.
yeah.
I mean, it
Oh,
was 2 weeks
listen,
off really because it seemed like you
yeah,
saw me in person on Tuesday. We didn't podcast that week.
yeah, it's true. Listeners, by the way, I forgot to mention this. Logan is healthy. By the time we found out we couldn't go to Italy, we knew he was gonna be healthy. Like that was the other part of the story. So like
It was already
Friday,
on the mend.
well, they gotten him on an antibiotic for a couple days earlier, and then Thursday night they were like, well, it's pneumonia, and we are like, it's pneumonia. Like they hadn't mentioned that, and
Yeah.
then Friday. And I think they hadn't mentioned it because they knew we were going to Italy and they were trying not to panic us. And they were like, this is going to be fine. And then Friday, they put him on a I'm not going to pronounce it.
Zithromax.
Yeah.
Azithromycin, but Zithromax.
Yeah.
Or
And,
Z-Pack. You want to be
yeah.
cool. Again, the
Okay.
Z-Pack.
So they put him on that on Friday midday ish, like, or whatever.
Hmm.
We had like a 9 o'clock appointment. And because he was still having a fever, he wasn't like a spiked fever. It was like a very low grade fever, but we were like, we don't know what the fuck to do. Friday night, which is when we would have been on the airplane, was the worst because
Oh, peaked at night.
he also
Okay.
didn't handle the antibiotic well. He had a little bit of
Hmm.
vomiting, and then Saturday morning, you would have thought, other than the cough can last 3 weeks,
Yeah,
but other
yeah.
than the cough, he's been like pretty good to go since
Yeah,
Saturday.
24 hours of antibiotic, if he's
Yeah,
not in a really bad way, yeah, symptoms
yeah,
start disappearing so fast. Yeah. So
yeah,
here's one of my favorite pneumonia stories. But I think I texted you this when you were telling me about him being on
yeah.
Zithromax. But audience, you didn't read our text. Um, so my son did have pneumonia like 4 times by the time he was 4 or 5. Like we were convinced he had a reactive airway. I used to have to go to daycare and give him uh, nebulizer treatment of albuterol to make sure he was breathing well. So we figured he's going to be asthmatic, which they don't diagnose until 7. And by the time he was 7, it had cleared up, and he's never really had a problem, with anything breathing again. And me get
So is
strep
this
all the time.
Joseph or Jacob?
Jacob,
Okay.
my oldest. Yeah. So, but on one of probably the third time he had pneumonia, we were good at diagnosing pneumonia in our house. Like we knew, like we can put our ear to his back when he's breathing and hear the rattle. We knew what it sounded like. And so I had a comedy show, doing it at part of a Raleigh Little Theater. It's one of the nice venues we were in for a little while. And during it's Friday night show, and during intermission, I go backstage and I check my messages on my phone, and I have a voicemail, and that's like brand new having a cell phone. Like I got the cell phone when she was pregnant with Jacob, so maybe I've had a cell phone 3 years or 4 years only. It wasn't as part of our lives as it is now. But I checked my voicemail from her, and I'm like, oh. a voicemail. My wife would never call me during a show because she knows I'm on stage. So this must be important. So I check the voicemail and it's Jacob's fever is at 102 and I can hear him rattling. He looks, his eyes are sunken. He's got pneumonia. So I got to do the thing that every comedian wants to do once in their life. During the intermission, I walked back on stage. I said, "There's no problem, ladies and gentlemen, but is there a doctor in the house?" Because my friend Paul, who I grew up with, who had moved down here from New York, was a doctor, was in the audience with his wife. And he looked up at me and I was just, "Come here," gave him the little thing and came backstage and I told him Jacob's got pneumonia. I told him our pharmacy, he got on the phone, called in a prescription for Z-Pak, for Zithromax, to our pharmacy so we can get it first thing Saturday morning. Like it was already too late to get one because I left it on the machine with his prescriber number. So first thing in the morning, we were able to pick up antibiotics so that he'd be on antibiotics through the weekend before we got to see our doctor. We went to the doctor on Monday and the physician's assistant, Donna, is like, she goes, "Yeah, he definitely has pneumonia." I'm like, "Yeah, we knew it. So he's been on antibiotics since Saturday." She's like, "Wait, what do you mean he's been on antibiotics?" And we said, "Well, I have a friend who's a doctor and he called it a prescription for us." She says, "Then why did you come here?" I said, "Well, if you said no, it's not, we would stop the antibiotic treatment. We're not going to keep him on antibiotics if you say he shouldn't be on it." And she goes, "Oh, don't be stupid. You know he has pneumonia." So
Nice.
it was nice to, as a comedian, be able to use the line as our doctor in the house, like seriously, and grab my doctor.
Nice.
But we don't talk to you anymore because he's a fucking trumper.
Oh, yeah.
They're so desperate.
So
They're so desperate.
it's so much fun to watch them flounder.
And it doesn't mean that it's an automatic electoral win, but it just feels so good to see them so desperate and
It feels like it's been so long since we've been the cool kids in that way, like,
yeah.
but it's definitely since Obama for sure. Like, anyway,
Well, Biden's aviator glasses are kind of cool.
yeah.
There
So
was a clip back with Obama where I think it was a setup thing, obviously, where Obama's on the couch and Biden is sitting at a desk and he goes, "Hey, what do you like better, these glasses?" And he takes as his pair of aviators, takes them off, puts on an identical pair, or these glasses. And
nice.
Obama's like, "It's the same thing." And he's like, "Yeah." It was a great little comic moment that they set up.
So today, I
Mm.
knew yesterday that I'd be going on. I would be finishing up. Sorry, I know this is a hard transition, but this is my brain. I also want to.
I'm hard
There's a
too.
few.
It's okay.
Good. That's the way we like to podcast. It's why
Got that one
is
out, Alex. I don't want my erection on the podcast.
nipples up. Anyway, so um, as I found out yesterday that I would be taking the time off today, I was trying to get things in order because I didn't want to leave everybody, high and dry at work. Um, Not
And
like
isn't that a
Ben
lovely bit of
Shapiro.
extra stress to give
Uh,
yourself on the last day when you're trying to get rid of your stress?
it wasn't. It really wasn't that stressful. But what I was, there was several people that I told. There were several people at work that I had told, and so there's a couple people who I'm pretty close with who were really sympathetic. And then today, they were there
And then
yesterday.
there's Alex.
No, they were there yesterday, and they were very sympathetic, very kind in a great way. I today told a few people because I'm not going to be there and I don't know, and like lots of shit changes, and I don't know if and I think FMLA covers up to 90 days potentially. If I'm gone 90 days, what's going to be gone when I get back? Who's going to be there? So I just wanted to kind of say, like kind of let people know, So I mentioned it to a few people that I really like at work that weren't there yesterday, and the reaction was very different from them. It was not one of sympathy, not one of pity. It was one of jealousy. Of literally, I told someone that I absolutely, she's awesome.
Sarah's kind
I
of hot.
said,
I
I,
understand.
I said, hey, I just so you know, like, sorry, it's been a little weird today. Or I've been a little weird. I didn't really want to tell you in front of in front of my manager and a bunch of other people, but I'm going to be taking some time off. I'm taking a leave of absence for some mental health issues. And she puts up a fist to fist bump me and goes, "How do I get one of those?" Because everybody is like burning out, and I
Yeah,
don't.
yeah, yeah.
I'm sure.
Again,
I'm sure to
like
some.
I'm not clinically depressed, but oh God, do I need a mental health day? Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So that was that. I actually really got a kick out of that. I was like, because you you have this feeling of like, oh, if I tell people that I'm taking time off because of my mental health, you're going to get very like, oh, are you okay? And instead, I got like, oh yeah, no, I get it. I fucking get it. Like,
Yeah.
and that's what I got from a lot of people today. And that was a really different. Like, when I was sick and had these issues in my teens and 20s, the response was very good. Now, people are concerned. My parents are concerned. Um, the people at work who know people who've had depression issues were concerned. But there was this reaction, and I've never gotten this reaction before, and it was like kind of awesome. And I was like, because you don't want to feel
I'm
pity.
saying I got lucky with the support that I've gotten at work, and it sounds like you kind of in
Yeah,
the same place. You got unexpected support in an
yeah,
unexpected way. Kind of, yeah. It's
yeah.
kind of an interesting.
Like there's a
I
gut.
feel blessed.
Yeah, you want the concern, but you don't want the pity. And
Hmm.
sometimes those things seem like they come hand in hand. And all the concern, I didn't feel like there was pity. And then there
I mean,
was
I
the people.
pity you, but not for your mental health issues.
Yeah, yeah, it's for my small penis.
No, it's not for your small penis. It's for your extra wide ass that there's no friction.
That's because I use
Cut it out,
super.
Alex. Cut it.
Alex hasn't been cutting the podcast. He's been cutting clips, I guess. Yeah. I understand what you're saying. See, so that was the other thing I wanted to say was I don't know if you two have noticed, uh, but I feel like I have been a lot less sharp the last few months. Um, in the moment, like I know for a fact that like we've talked about it. I for Chocolate Diamond Media, I went and recorded some stuff for Oak City Hot Sauce, and I've sat down, and part of it is that I had some green screen stuff that is not coming out how I wanted it to. But there was also that mental health, like when you're depressed and you're just like, I just fucking don't even know where to start.
Yeah, I did.
Eh,
I know I need to do this, but not today. It's going to be tomorrow,
right,
and
and
that's
I've
for
been
2 weeks.
that for a month
Yeah,
or
I
longer,
get that.
and I've started it. I've just at this point I'm like I don't know where to start fixing these little bits and pieces that I need to, and I feel fucking terrible about that. And I've been doing that on so many little things. I will say for the last 7-8 days, I feel like I've sat around doing nothing a lot. Like I feel like I have had no motivation. Like going to the gym was a shitload of effort. The couple times I did it, I was like, I need to get up, I need to do something. And it's just that's been a. I am sure that I had those issues when I was in my 20s, in my teens, but there's a couple things that I don't think that you can. I think that I hadn't formed some of my habits that in my healthy times that I have now. So like I wake up relatively early and I do a lot. I'll get up early and go to the gym, and I'll get up early and do this, and or I'll get up reasonably, not early, but on a Saturday I might get up at 7:30 and do the dishes or do some other thing that needed to be done, or sometimes get ready to mow the lawn. Like I've been sleeping in, like literally, and it was funny too, filling out the intake forms for the new doctor that I'm trying to see. They have all the symptoms laid out. You have to check off the
Mm,
boxes, and you don't think about it until you're like, oh yeah, like I have had a weird appetite. Oh yeah, I have had
yeah,
sleep issues. Like I'm either awake when I shouldn't be, or I can't wake the fuck up, or getting off the couch feels like I am trying to, stand up at the bottom of a pool with like chains on. Like, like there all these things. Some of them a little more concerning than others. Like I realized that I actually have been like kind of lightheaded a lot. Um, and so like there was like things like that, but I was like, oh shit, a lot of the stuff has been going on, and
yeah.
I didn't realize, and I think it's interesting because I think Sarah has been aware longer than I have that something was wrong. I just don't think she
But
knew.
kind of like Linda saying she could see me wearing my grief because she knows
Yeah,
I didn't look like I'm supposed to look.
Yeah, and I worry that you guys have seen it on here when we're doing this or exit interviews that I've just been like real spacey at times, and I realized also in the
At the
last.
time you took a double dose of medicine, maybe.
Oh yeah, oh my god, I forgot that I did that. Uh, yeah, but I mean that was probably because I've been so like out of it that I
Yeah,
did
yeah, that's
that.
what I'm saying.
Yeah, and then one thing that was fun last week before it got to the I need to take time off, I need to take a break from work, but when I was like, I'm Sarah, things aren't great, this is what's going on. I did say to her later in the day after I told her that, I was like, oh, one thing that I noticed is that I think Instagram has been aware of what's going on with me longer. And she goes, what do you mean? And I said, the algorithm has been showing me a lot of cute pet videos. Like, and that's
Oh,
not my usual feed. And I like think that like it's giving me comfort food kind of videos. Like, and
yeah,
so
yeah.
the algorithm was like, you are depressed, dude.
If all you see are cat videos, it knows the AI knows something's wrong.
Yeah. So they're going to use Instagram to diagnose depression from now on. You've been on here for 93 hours in a row, and you've only scrolled through otters and dogs. So you need to see a doctor. Here is a BetterHelp ad, and
Yeah, mine is telling me that I need to go on a diet because all I'm scrolling through is food
yeah.
recipes and
Oh,
food recipe reviews.
the other thing that other than the dog videos, the other thing that I've been doing up until the week that we were supposed to be in Italy was I had been getting lots of Italy videos because that was like the thing that was helping. Like
Yeah,
anytime
right.
I'd see an
Yeah.
Italy video, I'd be like, yeah, and I would like it and I'd send it, and it took a couple days to correct that because I'd be like, sitting not in Italy when I was supposed to be in Italy, and it would show me an Italy video and be like, fuck off with that.
So
So
here's I'm gonna cure your depression. I'm gonna give you a depression cure. Go on
okay,
the TikTok Talks, and if you have not yet found, um, I'm gonna get his real name. It's old Kevin Ashton. It's at Old School Kevmo with no H in school, so it's OLDSCOOLKEVMO. Kevin Ashton. He is the Mr. Rogers of cooking videos. He's this like guy who's been whole career in kitchens and working in good restaurants and stuff, and now he works like at a sorority house in Utah or some shit. And it's like him going, "Hey guys, today I'm making taco salad. Here's how I do it for the sorority. I make it for 35 people, so here's what I do." And then at the end, he's always like, "We taste it. Ooh, what a treat!" I mean, he's like, it's Bob Ross and Fred Rogers cooking.
nice,
It's such a he has such an uplifting and relaxing thing. And the other thing is, if you find Magic with Thomas, that's another tearjerky thing. He's a um, teenager with non-communicating kind of autism, and he lives in near Disneyland. There's like it's all these videos of him at Disneyland and sometimes Universal and interacting with the costume characters. And I don't know how the hell they train those people. I thought they're just out of work actors playing Captain Jack or whatever, but they're amazing at interacting with him and being comfortable with him and his uh, his presentation of his autism. And it chokes me up every time. Go watch those. They'll cheer you up. They're
good,
uplifting,
good,
wholesome TikTokies.
nice. I will look them up. I already
And
added
then
old school
watch
Kev
Letting
Mo.
Go, and then watch Letting Go with Loose Tools, and listen to an angry puppet scream and curse.
I love that his name is Loose Stools. Um, I so the last thing I want to mention before we.
And honestly, I didn't name him. Our friend Kevin named him. That was Kevin's
Nice.
creation. Then just to give credit where credit is due for Mr. Stools.
It was good to see Kevin. Also, I always think of Kevin as being your
He's in
age, just
Boston right now.
because huh?
He's in Massachusetts right now. He's dropping his son up at MIT right now.
Oh, nice. I always think of him as being your age because I met him through you. And
And he's
when
very
I
gray.
saw him last week, well, I mean, I don't know. But when I saw him a couple weeks ago at your mother's
Yeah.
house, and he mentioned his age, I was like, oh, he's
Hey,
a
he's
lot
closer to
younger
you.
than I. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
not quite, but he's
I mean,
closer to in the
his kids are
middle.
going to college and mine are done. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. He's
Well,
in
that's the
between
other
us.
thing is because his kids are older too. I thought like that because his older son is like Leah's age, right?
Yeah, about a year younger, but yeah, close for
Oh,
this
okay.
age. Yeah.
But um,
I wish they would date, but they been like best friends for way too long. Like they're always texting and Snapchatting. They're still in communication, but unfortunately it's very platonic. Because I think he's a great kid. It would have been great, but at least
yeah,
she has a really
well,
good friend she can confide in and rely on.
yeah, that's good. So one last thing that I want to mention
Yeah.
about depression before we go is the last person that I told at work today, which I didn't. Well, actually, technically second to last, but someone at work gave me a hug, and she was like, "That was weird." And he turned
You
to
weren't
her and he
direct
goes,
this time.
Mike's not coming back." And she's like, "You quit?" And I'm like, "No, I'm taking leave of absence." And I think that that's pretty TBA on when that ends, and I feel like that's a pretty inconclusive thing to tell people. So there's an air
There
of
needs to be a follow up. It's a huge thing not to give a reason. I mean, which
yeah.
not that obviously you don't have to
Oh,
give a reason, but people expect a reason when you
yeah.
say that.
But I'm like very open with. So I've always been very open with my
You do a
depression stuff.
podcast about it.
Yeah, this is my third year in a row talking about my depression, and
My depression.
I'm excited for like when we get to 25 or 26 years of me talking in September about it.
Fucker is still depressed.
I'm gonna be like, Matt, you're gonna be like,
My
I
grandkids come
remember
over.
when I remember when we started this podcast. Um. So anyway, so
You know why it's called a
she,
podcast? There's an iPod. It was a thing once.
So this woman and I, who is a great coworker, she and I start talking for a few minutes because I'm like on my way out, but she you know was concerned and she wanted to talk to me about it and like make me feel better. And she said, she alluded to having some mental health issues of her own, and it's everybody at this point seems to. So like I get it. It's not like a
Once killed a baby cub and put it in Central Park under a bicycle.
nice. That's just the brainworm talking. But she told
Shut up.
me about apparently there's a term for this piece of it that is going on called functional freeze. And I apologize, I didn't have that much time to read through the description completely because it literally we talked about it. I drove home and showered because I was very sweaty from work, and then hopped on here. But functional freeze, when she just started describing it, is like that inability to work or to do the thing you need to do. And I was like, holy fuck, I've had that in such like this debilitating, like I can't motivate. And it's weird, especially, and Matthew, I don't think that this is you, but like sometimes you give off this vibe, not in a condescending way, but in a like that you don't have the problems of a normal person. Um, and so
I
when
don't
I
have
talk,
anything of a normal person.
so I have a lot of people in my life who I don't think understand the idea of depression. And when you describe certain aspects of it, I think that they're like, well, just don't do that. So you're like, oh, I don't feel like I can get up. I don't feel like I can get up off the couch. I don't feel like I can do. And I think the thought is always, well, just get up, just make yourself. I don't know how to explain that like part of it, but this freeze thing, they're like it's part of like a fight or flight piece of the depression that you're not necessarily aware that um you're freezing like you would in a panic situation, but it's connected because you're like, oh, like nothing feels correct, so I will just do nothing. Like, so that's my last bit. um Anyway, I'm not accusing you of not being normal. I was just saying that sometimes you don't have the problems of a normal person. You're like, my parents are amazing, and I never had
Yeah,
trauma, and
yeah. I mean,
and
that's the thing. I lost my uncle when I was young, but no, no. Yeah, but it is. I feel guilty sometimes. Like my brothers have talked about it that like our parents are so fucking dysfunctional. All they do is fight and argue. And then we got around people whose parents were actually dysfunctional, and we went, oh, like what we thought was dysfunction is not dysfunction. It's just people who are bad at communicating.
yeah,
It's like Like I see the scale of it. Like I said, I say it when I'm in atheist circles a lot that I do not wish that I had religious trauma, in a horrible relationship with my parents because I'm an atheist and all this stuff. I am thankful that my grandfather was an atheist and my father was an atheist. So I grew up, with Jewish, but not Judaism, kind of thing.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I have a little bit of envy that people have a story,
Yeah.
they have a process, they had a moment, they have a cathartic release or what epiphany or whatever. And I'm like, eh, dad used to, say this is bullshit. Like
Yeah.
dad used to purposely be late to bar mitzvahs so he didn't have to hear the Hebrew part,
Yeah.
But,
Yeah.
yeah,
I
I'm
don't think.
aware. I'm aware of how lucky I am
Yeah.
in some of my background and life.
You don't lack the empathy that can some. I don't even want to say that it's. I think people. I think some of the people in my life definitely have the sympathy element of it, but they don't have the empathy element of it because they can't relate to it. And there is, and you don't seem to have that part. And also, I know from talking to you and your family that while you have a lot of these things, like these, like I know that Madafi was raised more religiously than you, and that she has, she's come on here to talk a little bit about some of her issues, and I know that you've got stuff. So I'm not saying like you're in it and you're in and among it like the way that like I don't think Sarah deals with certain things at all. Like I think Sarah can get depressed, when she was grieving her mother and stuff, but Sarah doesn't have. But
Oh, don't
Sarah's
worry. Like,
never.
I'm in a grief state right now, but I know
Yeah,
that's not depression. Like,
right.
like we would
Well,
colloquially say, "Oh, I'm depressed about it," but I know it is not the depression that you have.
but I think that there can be overlap.
But
I
there's
think grief. I think
definitely
grief.
overlapping symptoms. It's
Yeah,
definitely overlapping symptoms, but it's not a pathology with me. I know it will
right,
pass.
right. But with Sarah, like her, I mean, it's been almost 4 years. It'll be 4 years in January on the 6th. And since her mother passed, and she still has moments when I'm like, oh, this is, and I get that like grief is
Yeah.
a long term process, but it's also like, well, my point being like I don't, she's never really had the lack of empathy or sympathy for me when I'm going through it, but I don't see her going through the same things. She goes through stress. She definitely goes through anxiety, but like some of the other elements, but she is not like that. But I do have other people where if I told them like, oh, like I don't I don't know, like I couldn't get up off the couch. They're like, were your legs broken? Like why couldn't you get up off the
Yeah,
couch?
that feels so archaic to me. That
Yeah.
that response, like
Yeah.
that's a 1970s or 60s
Right.
response of not understanding.
Yeah.
It's
And
like I don't know how to you intellectually even though I don't experience it, I don't know how you intellectually don't understand it at this point.
right, right. But I also think like from their point, I don't think that they're trying to be uncaring or cruel. I think that they're just like I don't know how to intellectually explain it, and they don't know how to intellectually understand that. Like, no, it's like
Yeah, I mean, I do get it. It's like if you've never experienced something, it's hard to imagine the experience
yeah,
of something you've never experienced.
yeah, yeah. It's true. Yeah,
Like picture this, picture for a second in your head.
it's exactly what I was
Yeah,
thinking, and then
yeah.
I was also thinking about so when the Hobbit movies came out, they were being played back. They were being recorded and played back at 60 frames per second. And I read an article where they described how this is going to change the way that like because 24 frames per second was made because film was expensive and that was the fewest frames
But
per
we've
second.
learned to view video that way, and that's what's
Right.
correct to our
And
attention
so
now.
our brains have, and then, but because of that, that was mostly because of an economic situation. It was the cheapest way of tricking ourselves. And they said, but now with digital, we can do 60 frames per second, and it doesn't have that same cost because you're not reeling, you don't have thousands and thousands of footage, of feet of film anymore. So it's not the same process. So we can do 60 frames per second and play back at 60 frames per second. Now they've always done higher frame rates and they've played them back at 24 the whole time. So they described this process in that they were doing in The Hobbit of recording at 60 and playing back at 60 and how the movement would look different to us than the 24 frames per second movement. And I literally couldn't understand. Like I knew I was able to explain them. Like I don't understand what it's going to look like. And we paid, Sarah and I paid. I called the theater. I said, "Is this one of the theaters that's going to be playing it back at 60 frames per second?" Because I wanted to understand what it would look like.
Yeah.
And they said, "Yeah, it absolutely is." And we paid for it, sat for the 4 hours of the first Hobbit movie, and I was like, "It doesn't look any different." And I went back out and I asked them, I said, "Can I?" I said, "Ask the, is a projectionist here? Can I talk to the projectionist?" And they were like, "Sure." And I was like, "That was the 60
Let's
frames
get
per
him out of his
second?"
chains.
And he was like, and the guy was like, "No, that's the 24 frames per second. We don't do the 60 frames per second here." And I was like, "Well, what the fuck?" Like, and so to this
I
day,
came
I don't
here.
know. I think that they've started, and Alex will probably be able to correct me on this, but I think
Bastard.
when you are on certain video game formats and stuff, that things are playing back at 60 frames per second.
Yeah.
But
So when I
I,
bought my current TV, like when I was researching it, I bought one that is like 70,
oh yeah,
is it frames per second that I'm talking about? Or refresh rate. The refresh rate is 70.
refresh
And,
rate.
and the reason was if I get a PS5, it'll make a difference because the
Yeah,
PS5 can broadcast that. Like it didn't make a difference for anything else that I would ever own. And then
yeah,
we got a PS5, so it's like, oh, if we watch 4K stuff on the PS5, like the video games that I play look crisper and cleaner than they would otherwise look. Is my old man eyes sensitive enough to see the difference? I don't know. I don't know how I would know other than put two TVs side by side, but I bought it
yeah.
just in case.
Well, and now I've probably seen 60 frames per second played back at 60 frames per second, but I don't know because it's never been labeled that. So I think that that's that, like, I've never experienced. I don't know that I've experienced it, and I cannot, like. It's been, what did The Hobbit come out? 2010 or 11? It's been a while
I don't know,
since the first.
it's a new movie as far as I'm concerned.
Anyway, but so I think that's the same thing as, like, when I can't understand that, is the same as somebody being like, "Why couldn't you get up off the couch?
Yeah.
Why can't you know?" I I
Have you
I
tried
don't
not
tend.
being a mutant?
Yeah, I don't tend to freeze in moments of fear the way that some people do. I mean, I have other bad instincts when it comes to fear response, but, like, there are times when, whether it's I'm driving a, like, car, and somebody swerves weird and I've been able to maneuver around it, but, like, I don't have that response. So when people freeze in a fear moment, I'm like, "Why are you freezing? I don't understand why you're freezing." So I kind of understand that I don't understand. Uh,
Yeah.
but, like, but yeah, it's anyway.
Well, it's like I see people react to spicy food as if it hurts them, and like I
Yeah,
do, like, I mean, I can eat spicy food that's hot enough to hurt me, but the things that other people react, I'm like, why would a jalapeno make you hurt?
yeah,
I can, eat a jalapeno raw, fresh, whatever, without flinching. And it's hard to know. You have to intellectually, I understand that everyone has different tolerances and we react differently things. But somebody yesterday was asking me about how do I build up my resistance? And I was like, I avoided hot foods because I thought I was a wimp and couldn't eat them. And then one day I had wings with people and I didn't realize they were supposed to be spicy until everyone freaked out about how many I was eating, how fast. I'm like, oh, I
yeah,
just have a tolerance. I didn't build it. It's not you know, a, it's a luck thing
yeah,
or a bad luck thing because it takes hotter things for me
yeah,
to even get the enjoyment of spicy.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I understand when it comes to degree things. I think I get it better because I can be like, "Oh, this weight doesn't feel like a lot of weight to me, but I know what a lot of weight feels like." So, like, if I picked up an, I don't know, like, if I'm moving a box and I'm like, "This doesn't weigh anything," it doesn't feel like it weighs anything, and Logan is like, "Ugh," I understand because I've tried lifting shit that's heavy. So when it's a matter of degree, I can understand it. When it's a new experience that I, like, don't have a correlation to, I can't understand it. And I think when it comes to that lack of, when it comes to any, like, physical inability due to mental, due to mental, not capacity, um, or emotional, limitations at the moment,
Yeah.
I that's what I think people don't. I've experienced people who don't
Yeah.
get
So
that.
I understand that you have a broken leg, so you can't jog, but telling me
Exactly.
that your brain chemistry is off, so you can't jog is
Yeah.
harder to conceptualize for people.
Yep. Yeah. So I was thinking, because we're going to throw in Alex's outro, but I want to also add on to that about Patreon, because here's one thing that is happening with my leave of absence, and that is that I will not be making my full salary. In fact, I may not be making any salary for a little bit. And so if you wanted to support us, a great way of doing that would be going to patreon.com/talking about the big stuff. This episode that's live, you can watch it for only $1 when they're live. $1 a month for 4 episodes, and you get to see it live, which means it's completely uncensored, um, which is a terrifying thought when it comes to dealing with me and Matthew. But yeah,
And let me just say
so
real fast, like we were just talking about how you can't imagine sometimes an experience that you haven't had any kind of relative experience. You can't imagine the shit that Mike has to cut out if you never listened to an unedited episode.
that is true. But for $1 a month, and if you hop on here Tuesdays at 6:30,
You can be
you can see,
traumatized.
you can hear Matthew make inappropriate jokes and realize that he's gonna meet my parents this weekend.
Hi, Dad.
I feel like I'm hoping that my dad laughs hard, because that was my dad's laugh, and I'm excited for you and Alex to hear it. All right, I'm gonna stop there.
Remember, the conversation doesn't end here. It's just the beginning. If you have thoughts or questions or topics you'd like us to tackle in a future episode, drop us a line on our social media channels. Engage with this video when you are now watching it as a VOD on YouTube. Send us an email. We love hearing from our listeners, bringing us topics, because if you leave it up to the three of us, we're going to eventually be talking about underwater basket weaving. So we would appreciate you guys reaching out a little bit. Don't forget to subscribe to Talking About the Big Stuff on your favorite platform. Give us a 5-star rating. Engage with it. Criticize us. We need to grow and be better, and you're going to help us be there. You're going to help us get to that point. It really helps us more to reach out and also to keep the conversation going. Thank you for tuning in. We'll be back next week with more big ideas and more thought-provoking discussions. Until then, stay curious, stay informed, and keep talking about the big stuff.
I guess my only last thought would be to say, this was a rough episode to talk about. Another tough, strong episode. We've had a couple recently, and those of you who stuck through to the end, thank you for being here to talk about the big stuff. And now you can depress the stop button and stop listening.
The preceding podcast has been a Chocolate Diamond Media LLC production. Copyright 2023, all rights reserved.